the destruction of his property and his house as an eyewitness for the California conflagration, this, I don't know, fiery Armageddon that's going on in California. And the problem has been nobody's talking to people on the ground. Nobody's talking to eyewitnesses. And so we want to bring you a second part of our report with Robert Otey so that you can hear, and I'm hearing it for the first time myself, exactly what he's going through on the ground there, which I assume probably was the total destruction of your house and your land and your property. So, Robert, will you tell us what's going on there?
Yeah. I just, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, sorry, I just got a call on the other line, so now it's clear. Okay, so what happened is I went back to Concal a couple of days ago and got in. Well, it was actually 3 days ago. It was only residents the first day, and then the second day they opened it up. So I was able to get in there and see everything firsthand. I actually did a few videos. I posted those on my site now, on my channel. So that information's all there. And it was pretty much, complete devastation. I did have a metal shed that had survived. I'd gotten that installed last year, and it was, solid metal. All the framework was metal and the sheets of metal. Unfortunately, I just cleared it all out the day, the week before, and I was planning on that very morning moving everything in, like my electric trikes and generators and kayaks and all the stuff I was just going to put in. But then the fire happened, so basically the shed was empty, so that nothing was saved. My house was burned to the ground. The trailer was burned to the ground. My bedroom, my woodshed was burned, and basically the entire forest around me and all of the buckbrush, all the old stuff from 10 years ago. There was a fire there 10 years ago. All that stuff that was still standing burned, and most of the stuff that was laying on the ground is gone as well. Only some oaks survived because they burned real quick. They dropped all their leaves, and one of the really good things is my orchard survived because they're all like 2 to 3 year old trees that I grew from bare roots. So they're not real big, and there was a lot of cleared space around the trees, so about 65 fruit trees survived.
Robert, that's a disastrous report. I'm so sorry to hear that. That is heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was pretty devastating. I mean, people can see it in the 3 videos I shot. It's a total wipeout. But like I said, there's some good news. I got my orchard. I really love those trees. I put a lot of time and energy, over the last few years growing those up, and they mean the world to me. I mean, the best fruit in the world I've ever eaten is off those trees. So, I have that to look forward to.
That is incredible. The devastation sounds like, with your experience, it wasn't just the houses that went up. It sounds like all the trees. But you also said there was a huge wind going on that night. Isn't that also true?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the truth. And for several days before, off and on, there was 50 to 60 mile an hour winds, and the wind was howling so loud, even with my earplugs in, it was, keeping me up. It woke me up from time to time. So, no, there's a lot of disinformation going on about no winds and, the humidity being 43% and all that. That's not true. I was there. They were high winds. I've got nothing to gain by lying about it. This is the truth. The humidity was about 10% for over a month there. Things were extremely dry, and this fire was definitely whipping in all directions by this really ferocious wind.
Wow. So yours sounds like it was a wildfire.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question about it. It came up over the ridge from Pulgas and, just wiped everything out in Concal, just about everything, and then spread over the ridge to Paradise as well in Magalia.
Well, now in Paradise, it seems as if the destruction is so profound, and that some of the things they're doing are so odd, like not letting people back in whatsoever, telling them that it's filled with toxic chemicals, which it may be. Perhaps even toxic chemicals that were dropped in the weeks before the fire. But the point is, over where you're at, they're letting you back in, and you are basically seeing that it's somewhat consistent with what you know to be wildfires.
Yeah, well, I learned a lot because, I've seen a lot of these claims online. I've been watching, A Plain Truth and Deborah Tavares and many, many other channels. And their claims like, how is it possible this tree didn't burn and this one did, and this house didn't burn and this one did? Well, that's the way these fires work, and I saw it everywhere on the road coming in. There would be pockets of green ones, and when I was driving through it, it looks like everything's on fire, but some stuff did survive, and some cabins survived there, some trailers survived. Most of the stuff got wiped out, but that's the way these winds, they have massive winds that are blowing this at ground level, so it ignites stuff all over the place. So, yeah, a lot of stuff got taken out, but then a lot of stuff got spared too.
But as you were leaving, or just before, you were looking around, and it didn't seem as if the fire was going to then ignite everything around you, your house, all your property, the trees at the top, and so on and so forth. It sounded like an anomaly. It sounded like kind of a Twilight Zone kind of experience. Is that what wildfires are?
Well, yeah, no, but as we had talked in our first interview, I do believe that DEW is used to augment it, because I watched fires springing up all around me that I saw no, embers falling from the sky, no burning embers. And, things that were anomalous, like the wood piles just, exploding into flames, my gate exploding into flames, my shed, even though the fire line was still maybe a half a mile away and hadn't even come down, my hill to my place, yet. But there was fires springing up all around me. And yeah, as I had mentioned before, I had seen this in the Oakland firestorms and watched the embers, falling down and burning shingles, starting fires. So this was very different, very similar conditions, but a very, very different thing to watch. And that's what led me to conclude that DEW was used to augment it. It may have also been used to start it. I don't know. That's pure speculation from my part.
Well, but the speculation is from firsthand direct experience. And what may be going on here is there are different types of this, because in some of the pictures, and it's very odd, Robert, being here far away from there, it's hard for me to make any true judgments. I would have to be there talking to the people who witness these things. And now we're seeing some of the videos taken by people with their own cameras coming onto the internet, and they are showing me some very interesting things. But let's go back to your fire. Is it true that PG&E, either by faulty electrical wiring and equipment or by a direct conspiracy, actually lit these fires? And is it true, or is it possible, that directed energy weapons might have been just used from normal cell towers that had permeated the air with so much microwave transmission that the chemtrails that had been dropped, which I think certainly on Paradise they say that, in chemtrails are the very substances that create thermite. And if you ignite the magnesium, if you put magnesium on top of these substances, aluminum, borium, strontium, and other substances which are used to create thermite, if you put magnesium there and you somehow ignite it, magnesium will create a fire that is so intense that it is almost inexplicable to look at the way that the fire works. And I'm beginning to suspect that somehow these directed energy weapons on the very houses in some of these neighborhoods, which show no burning of anything else around it, totally different from what happened to you in your area. And so because there's the conspiracy theories that say that your area where you live is supposed to be vacated of people in the future, according to certain UN plans. So do you believe that there was a conspiracy that perhaps with PG&E that started the fire also?
I doubt that. I really think that it was probably an accident. I think that PG&E is definitely responsible. Let's get to the core of this. I mean, really, what's at issue here is the slave grid. They've got all these wires hanging, all these trees everywhere. We've got wires hanging all around us, and that's a slave grid. We've been told, our whole lives, that hydro is green energy. Well, look what just happened. That's got to be some of the dirtiest pollution ever created from hydroelectric dams. I mean, this is directly responsible because these wires come from hydro dams. So what's at issue here really is the slave grid and how toxic it is and how filthy. It's not green at all. I mean, the gas burning turbines they're green compared to what we just went through with this nightmare. With all the smoke and debris and the chemicals and all the filth, the radiation, everything that was put up in the air. These gas turbines can't even match that. So they're green in comparison. So this is a joke. The whole hydro thing is a complete disaster. The grid is a disaster. Victor Schauberger had solutions for this over 70 years ago. We don't want to be damming up our rivers. We don't want to be doing hydro dams. There's alternatives to all of this, and Victor Schauberger had the solutions to all of them.
You know, I noticed, I went to your site after I interviewed you the first time, and you are one amazing guy. You actually understand things that I've been studying for years, and I never understood. And so my previous... Oh, yeah, you are... And if people go to your site, they're going to find out that the universe is an electric universe, and that explanation is so much clearer and so much simpler than all the nonsense you hear by theories. And it's important to remember their theories. And what you're talking about with some of the free energy, some of the Schauberger, some of the all of it. You tap into so many of it, so many of the different free energy devices that we describe in some of our intelligence reports. That people do need to pay attention to that, because that really can be the direction of the future. So I just want to. Also, you got great music on your site, and
thank you.
I'm going to have to go and look at these videos. But tell me more about your neighborhood. What happened with your friends? What is the bottom line with Concal?
Okay, yeah. Pretty much everybody around me got wiped out except for my friends that had a new custom home that was to code. It was all stucco, and it had the shingles on it that are not, fire resistant. And their place is unscathed. I was absolutely blown away because everybody else is wiped out. Absolutely. All the trailers, all the cottages, all the wood stuff, they're all completely gone, but their place was spared. So, there's an enormous amount of disinformation going on with all this speculation, people flying over with drones and saying, oh, this isn't a forest fire, we can see the forest. Well, yeah, but you need to be on the ground and be able to see what happened from the ground. The reason those trees are standing is because the fire moved through it so fast that only the pine needles and the cedar needles and all that stuff burned and left the trees standing. So, but if you get down there at ground level, you'll see everything on the bottom below the forest is completely taken out. All that old timber and the branches and the scrub and all that stuff is all gone. So it's absolutely, the entire area, as well as Paradise, was definitely hit by a forest fire. There's no question about it. This was a forest fire started at PG&E and Pulgas. That's well documented. Whether there was DEW used or not, we don't know. But as I've stated to you, I really believe I saw it used around me. I didn't see any beams or anything, but what I saw was inexplicable. All these fires igniting and exploding into massive flames instantly within a few minutes, and so, what I really would like to do is nip in the bud a lot of this disinformation that we're seeing, and maybe I should just go through a few of those points, real quick with what's being claimed.
I would love it if you would, especially if it addresses smart meters, because I've seen a lot of pictures where the smart meters burnt and the rest of the house didn't, and there was a big fire right at the smart meter, and you just go, wait a second. And these are pictures taken by insurance agencies for insurance claims. These aren't fake pictures. So I don't know what that means, but there's many theories out there. Can you tell us, from being on the ground and your experience in previous fires, what's really up?
Yeah, well, kind of a small list I have of the claims that are being made would be there was no winds, there was no low humidity, there was no forest fire, the government's keeping people off their land because they want to steal it. That's just not true. They're keeping us off to protect us because there's trees falling, and as you know, Paradise is a chemical wasteland now. Just imagine all the toxic waste that's there. Imagine the radiation from the hospitals and other places. All those kinds. There's all these claims about, this was done for a high-speed train. That's absurd. These places are in the mountains. The train's not going anywhere near there. Some houses got dewed and others did not. That's absurd. That's also, you can see that just from the way that a fire moves. I mean, and I saw that, like I said, to my neighbors, and I've seen it everywhere else. The fire will blow in all different directions, and some places will get taken out, some won't. And they'll say the same thing about trees. Well, how is it possible that this tree survived and this one right next to it didn't? Well, I saw little trees in the middle of these tall pines and stuff. They were totally wiped out, but the pines weren't completely untouched, and they're right next to each other. So this is just the way that a fire moves, wildfire like that's being driven at 60-mile-per-hour winds.
So can you go on further, Robert, with debunking some of these ideas, these conspiracy theories? some of which are probably, people who have absolutely good intention, but they're not on the ground. And until we have direct eyewitnesses, and I've had so many stories come to me personally and to Betsy and her team, people have wanted to say this or say that. And in some cases, they were actually trying to entrap us to say things that would sound like we were crazy conspiracy theorists. And so
that's a problem.
We didn't speak to them. But tell us more about what these some of these conspiracy theories, because some of them are just truly crazy, especially in relationship to what you directly experienced in your area.
Exactly. And, that's why I'm so concerned about this, because it's spreading like wildfire, all these wild, conspiracy theories. And I want to give as concise and accurate and honest a description of what I've seen personally as I can. And it's unfortunate these people are doing this, because it really it makes all of us lack credibility if we're talking along the same lines about DEW and things like that, if that's involved in our stories. So, I just sent you actually a video from a guy whose channel is called The Bitchin' Report, and he goes into some just, one after another of just his own interpretations of what's going on, and I can easily debunk every single thing he said. So I'll give you that link in order to show, just how wrong all this stuff is. Another guy is The Plain Truth. Unfortunately, Deborah Tavares has been a really good witness for all this kind of technology, and she's showed all the Agenda 21 and 2030 and all the documentation regarding the weapons and all this. So she's done some really good work, but unfortunately she got interviewed by A Plain Truth, who's a flat earther. So he has no credibility at all, because he believes the Earth's flat. And he just actually released a video claiming that 50,000 people in Paradise were murdered. So now he has no credibility at all, on top of the flat earth garbage. So these are the problems. You get these folks coming in that claim to be experts, or they're claiming to, expose this, and they bring an enormous amount of damage to those of us who are trying to find out what the truth really is.
I want to interview some fire persons who are on the ground in some of these neighborhoods, because that's what's inexplicable to me. What I see from some of the areas, particularly from Paradise, which might be similar to what happened over in Concow, it looks like a crazy, crazy wildfire. But the houses aren't all melted down like in some of these other pictures, which I don't even know if they're real pictures. But you can see, that's crazy. That's what fires do. Fires do absolutely crazy things. And in those houses, you still had the refrigerator there, and you still had the metal fence and some other thing, all this kind of stuff. So with your burn, what happened at your house? Did everything burn down into nothing but ashes, or did it look like a kind of regular fire?
No, just a regular fire. There was metal everywhere. My washing machine was still there. Things like propane, 10-gallon propane tanks did not burn down. They were still whole. My huge gas propane tanks, I got a 150 and a 300-gallon one. Those are fine. They're unscathed. They didn't blow up or burn down. I did find a concho belt that was made by Bill Bell, one of the greatest silversmiths of our age, an American guy. And it was melted. It was, pure silver, but it was melted. I was able to dig it out. And most of the conchos that went around the belt were really, really almost vaporized. They were like half gone. They were so burnt. But, this is to be expected when you've got 60-mile-an-hour winds. I mean, what does a blacksmith do? He takes a bellows and he, pumps it, to get the fire hotter and hotter and hotter. So, I mean, you hear reports about, a house only burns at 1,100 degrees or what. Well, add the wind to it, add 60-mile-an-hour winds, and those temperatures are going to come way up, and so that's why my silver belt, I was able to get it, the made belt buckle. I actually did a little video that's on there as well on my site, and it just shows that enormous amount of heat can be generated, but there's even the metal sheets that were on my roof were still there. They're all warped and messed up, but most of the metal is still there. It wasn't vaporized, and my toilet wasn't, I've heard, ceramic's been vaporized, all this, and so my toilet was completely intact, so, I wasn't, hit by a DEW as claimed by many of these conspiracy people on the property itself like that. Like we had talked about, I thought, fires were starting all around me that didn't conform to a normal forest fire, and that's why I said that I had concluded DEW was used.
Yes, I think that's the anomaly that I keep thinking about, is that you're standing there and then all of a sudden everything, because you see the fire up on the mountain, and then all of a sudden everything around you starts on fire. Vicious fire. Vicious,
Yes.
unstoppable
Yeah.
fire that surprised you so bad you barely had time to get your dogs and get out and save your life. And as you said, another few seconds and you wouldn't have made it. So that's the
Exactly.
inexplicable part,
Yeah.
is just that out of the blue, it just, whoom, went through like a blast furnace. And I just want to ask a crazy question that's sad. The people who went over to the lake and took refuge in the lake, I think you said there was even an island out in the lake. Did they turn out okay?
That's what I've heard. I don't know any of them. I don't know anything what happened to them, but I heard 100 people actually got away. And the real difference with my account of this is it's a real time account. Excuse me. I saw it when it was happening. A lot. What we're hearing from everybody else are these, after, they're looking at videos and drone footage and pictures, and people are trying to judge it in hindsight. And this is wrong, because most of these people don't know anything about how a fire works. They want to project onto these things how they think it should work. And this is the problem. And then their minds, instead of going, to something that's logical and reasonable and sensible immediately, they go to the conspiracy theory rather than saying, okay, well, like I was watching this one guy, for the Wishing Report, he's like, oh, look at this, the DEW hit the asphalt. It was like, no, when that car was on fire, it caught the asphalt on fire. I saw that even back in the Oakland Firestorm. I watched Highway 24 and 13 both catch on fire. The middle, because it's tar, for Christ's sake. It's, it burns, right? So it wasn't from the DEW. It was the fact that it got ignited from the car that was on fire.
So, Robert, as you were exiting and coming back to your property, I'm sure you saw these vehicles that were taken by the fire. Were the wheels of those cars so hot that they melted into pools of metal?
I did see pools of metal from various places, but I can't say it was the wheels. It seemed more like it was the aluminum blocks that had melted from the cars. I didn't pay a lot of attention. I know that the wheels on my tractor did not melt, but I know that the rubber on those tires basically burned. It was completely wasted. So,
Wow.
they didn't melt. The rims were fine. They just, the tires had burned the tractor up.
Wow. It's just amazing that you survived. Were people lost in Concal?
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are not being reported that were, killed. I mean, we're getting really bizarre, data as far as who's missing and who's been killed and all that stuff. I mean, I think it was up to 1,200 people at once, and then all of a sudden they're saying that no, everybody's found, and confusing as far as what we're being told.
Yes. Very confusing, both last year's fires and this year's fires. I mean, the numbers went huge, and then they speculated they were bigger, and then you don't hear hardly another word about it. And these are people. These are people's lives. And the people who are speculating with conspiracy theories need to remember that there are many people who have yet to be found, and we need to have the respect for the fact that these aren't stupid people. You're not a stupid person. 10 years ago, your property burnt. You know these things happen, but it doesn't change the fact that what you witnessed seemed to be really rather an anomaly, and that wasn't normal. And all we can say is from here, and our friends here at Aim for Truth, is we're sure glad you got your orchard, and we're sure glad that you're getting back on your land and you're getting going again. And I hope people realize that you're one of the real people out there who is suffering from this. This isn't something on television, and it isn't a conspiracy theory you can write off and say that it's not in your own backyard. No, this is reality, and it's probably going to continue to happen. Let me ask a question about that. In the 10 years between the fires on your property, did they clear the brush, and would that have helped slow down the fire?
No, no brush was cleared. In fact, a lot of brush grew up. I bought the property 3 years ago, and it still had a ton of, even cedars and stuff that they had originally cut up and left in piles that could have been burned as firewood. But nobody even took the piles and burned them. They just left them there to just rot. And I had to clean up enormous amount of that on my property itself and cut down a lot of trees. I mean, they left, 30 foot, 20 foot, small trees that are easy to cut down and clean up, were just left there, and they were ugly, and I wanted to, make my property beautiful, so I cut all that stuff down and burned it. But as far as the forest around me, no, it had all grown back really, really, really thick with deer brush and a lot of scrub oak, a lot of small oaks and things like that. So there's, it's radically different than an old forest, that's got a clean, like an old ancient forest, that's got a clean bottom to it where there's not a lot of thickets and brush and bramble that will ignite. Those are, we don't see those kind of forests anymore because basically all these areas are nothing but, monocrop tree farms for the most part.
So then the underlying brush and all that does stoke the wildfire? Is that true?
Oh, amazing. Yeah, totally. So there's tons and tons and tons of that everywhere because they don't clean it up. All these loggers, they leave all their stuff laying around. I mean, you go look at these clear-cut places, and it's an environmental disaster. And they don't clean it up. And then they plant these monocrop tree forests with the trees spaced really far apart so they grow fast. And that creates worthless lumber, basically, because the growth rings are so big and spongy, and they can't be used for, normal lumber. So then they grind those trees up and make this chipboard garbage. And then, they build these $1 million homes out of this crappy chipboard that's next to worthless. It's just glued together garbage.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's
quite
an insight. Now, when you cleaned up the brush around your place, did that slow down this fire, or was it just so wild and so fast with the 60-mile-an-hour winds that nothing stopped it?
Yeah, well, I have 5 acres, so I couldn't actually clean above me, and so there's some hard to get to spots. Couldn't clean up with the tractor. I cleaned up everything in the vicinity of, probably within 150 feet around my cabin was all clean. But as you go up the mountain, there was just tons and tons of, cedars and stuff laying down from the last fire, and all this enormous amount of deer brush. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's really, really thick stuff and hard to get through and very hard to clean up. And who's going to do it? It's just a nightmare. And now that's all gone. So, my property's pretty much burned to the ground, and there's very few cedar logs laying around, even from this fire. So it's going to be a lot easier to clean up this time, and I'll definitely be on it. I want to keep it as clean as possible.
So that's your plans. You're staying with your land. You're going to clean it up.
I hope to. It's all in the works. I mean, I got a very little insurance, a little tiny policy for my valuable personal property, which didn't even cover a fraction of what I own. I couldn't get any house insurance because they wouldn't insure a trailer with a cabin on it. So I'm just relying on FEMA, and then there's the lawsuit, and I'm definitely. I have a lawyer that's going to be suing PG&E for me directly. I'm not involved in the class action suit. I am suing them directly. I wasn't even a PG&E customer. I was 100% off grid, and my place gets wiped out, and I don't support the grid. I'm 100% against the grid. I've been teaching that for 16 years. It's a national security disaster. All somebody's got to do, if there were terrorists, which there haven't been in this country at all, I think the whole thing's been a fraud, but if there were terrorists, they could take out, these centralized energy production facilities, and then everybody's screwed, Everybody should have a point of use, an implosion turbine or a permanent magnetic motor or something like that, a free energy technology that's been suppressed by the military and the powers that be, so that we can't have them. And the energy barons, the warmongers, make enormous astronomical profits off of the slave grid and us having to go fight, foreign wars to murder people and steal their fuels and all that. It's a complete disaster. We're doing everything exactly backwards. True national security would be point of use, implosion motors or permanent magnetic motors, and to tear down this grid. This grid is just, it's created so many fires, and PG&E is getting his ass sued everywhere because of this, and it's just wrong. It needs to come to an end. We need to tear down all these worthless hydro dams too. These rivers do not need to be dammed up. We could have the storage facilities out in the Central Valley, small reservoirs for various areas, and spread it out rather than having it all in one place, which it could be taken out, once again by a terrorist if terrorism was real.
Those are all great suggestions, and that is true. And so your suit against PG&E is basically what, saying they're negligent or their equipment was old, or what is the lawsuit going to entail?
Well, I think it's been proved pretty clearly from the get-go that this line sparked there, over in Pulgas and started the fire. And I think that's, everybody kind of understands that. My lawyer understands that. He says it's a slam dunk, so, and that's, my lawyer, all he does is sue PG&E. That's what they've been doing for the last 10 years. And they've recovered $200 million dealing with PG&E. So, and he told me that there's tons and tons of money that PG&E has set aside for these kinds of things already. So, it's not like they're going to be out anymore. Apparently there's a mandate since they are a monopoly, that they had to have that money set aside for these things. And they try their best to get out of paying people, and then the corporate executives get to skim off the top of what's left over. And so, it's just like the insurance companies. They don't ever want to pay you what they owe you. They always want to chisel you down. So it's business as usual, because everything's about the worship of mammon and the bottom line. It's all about money, and it's not about us. It's not about humanity. It's not about nature. It's these people don't give a shit, because all they care about is their god mammon, the money. So
I know that's the truth. Now tell me this: is their equipment just so bad, and they lose so many court cases? Is that because their equipment's just so bad and they really just won't fix it? I mean, I don't understand. Though I do know that over the years they blame it on campfires and cigarette butts, and then we find out nope, it was PG&E, another line that was sparking that had been reported for weeks beforehand, and it started the fire, and they basically ignored the warning signs and such. So what is it? Is it negligence? Is it old equipment, or what is it that's the key factor that helps win these PG&E cases?
Well, the grid is so extensive that it's hard to maintain the whole grid and go in and clean out all the trees below it. And inevitably there's going to be a problem. They can't possibly maintain the whole thing. It needs to be torn down. The grid is nothing but slavery. And most people just don't understand that free energy exists, and that we don't have to live like this. It's even what I was doing with generators, burning gas, is cheaper than buying hydro electricity from PG&E, who's right next to me. And so it's a disaster.
Wow. That's really quite a statement. They're next door, but it's cheaper to make your own. And I think...
Yeah, and I hate it. I hated having to haul gas and burn gas, but, I can't get a Victor Schauberger implosion turbine because they won't give them to us. That's not allowed. In fact, the entire science we've been dumbed down with does not permit free energy. It's laughable according to their backward physics. Yet the entire universe operates on free energy. I mean, who charges a star for its energy? It's working on free energy. It's not burning hydrogen. It's not a nuclear furnace. These are absurdities. It's an electric plasma ball, and has nothing to do with the backward science we're being taught.
When we were doing our reports on this, it was shocking to find that in Canada, there are generators that run on nothing but water, not even purified water, not distilled water, just any old water. And we said, well, let's look into this. Oh, they are so backlogged. Holy Lord, you have to wait years to get one of these things. But hello, why don't we bring them into America? And why don't we use this in every single home? Water could be running our house. Or there are many other alternatives, as you have pointed out. And another alternative was just to add one little device to your car and a little tiny container of water. And guess what? Your car is going to run 10 times better and more efficient. And what is it? It's nothing more than adding hydrogen to the fuel line. There are so many ways that we could do this, but the vested interests, as you say, through Mammon, the god of money, the worship of money and greed, that's what drives so many of these things. Robert, we are so happy to hear that you're at least safe, that you're back on your... Are you on your property right now today?
No, I just got back. I ran up there and shot those vids and got back. I'm actually just worn out. This whole thing is just taking a toll on me, so I can hardly even talk right now. excuse me, everybody seems to have really bad throat problems and nose problems and lung problems right now. So just trying to get better from that at this point.
Well, you're in that burn zone. There's just so much stuff flying around that, and of course, as we speculate, there could have been many other things flying around, all these substances, and we just hope that you're going to be well, and we hope that you're going to get back on your land and get back to doing what you love to do. And we thank you today for giving us this opportunity to catch up with you, and also to help clarify a lot that's going on there in terms of your direct experience in your area, and also some of the wild speculation that is going on, and clarifying that for us, because it's very important. So we want to send our love and our thanks to you for sharing all this with us, and to your 3 dogs and your family who are looking after you. And when you get back up there on the land, we're going to be thinking about you and hoping that you get back to that idyllic type of experience that you were working on when you were there before. So thank you for being with us today, Robert.
Yeah, thank you so much, Douglas, and I sure appreciate your audience. I must say thank you to all the wonderful, highly intelligent people you have. Many of your audience sent me contributions and donations, and we didn't ask for those, but I just really appreciate your audience. They're really beautiful people, and thank you so much for everything you've done.
It's our pleasure, and I'm going to again give you a plug on your site. I went there. I now need to go back there about 100 times because there are literally so many videos there on the topics that I love: Walter Russell and Schaumburger and Tesla and Frank Chester, and just so many things that you are tuned into that have a connection to the way that energy should be working. And it's just a sad, sad day, and I hope you win your lawsuit against PG&E, that really a grid that you stand against was such a key factor in starting that wildfire that took your property and your home. And again, our love is with you, and we'll be checking in with you again over the time and seeing how you're developing.